Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, How to Make Your Data Work for You with Software-Defined Storage. This webinar is brought to you by Express Computer in partnership with IBM. I'm Sudipta Dev, Senior Associate Editor with Express Computer. Traditional storage can't respond to the complex process of digital transformation, where familiar on-premise environments give way to new hybrid cloud deployments as quickly as you need and within the budget you can afford. That's where software-defined storage comes in. SDS decouples storage software from hardware and allows organizations to expand their storage capacity in the way they want, making the storage infrastructure both effective and flexible and scalable. This webinar will help us understand how to simplify storage landscape and eliminate any bottlenecks, control costs, resolve storage management challenges, and many other important factors. Sharing with you his expert knowledge on the subject is our speaker for the day, Raghava Prakash Ananda, Technical Sales Manager, Systems Hardware, IBM India and South Asia. But before I hand over to Raghava, I wanted to go over some of the house rules. This is an audio and video webinar being broadcasted live and will be available as on demand. We will have polls during the webinar. I request you all to participate in the same. We will have a round of Q&A at the end of the webinar. However, you can send in your questions anytime during the webinar using the questions box. If you face any technical issues, please try to refresh your browser or else reach out to our team using the same questions text box. If you have any further questions or wish to interact with the speaker, please leave a comment using the questions box and you will be contacted post the webinar. I will now hand over to Raghava. Let me give you a brief introduction about him first. Raghava is a Technical Sales Manager, Systems Hardware for IBM India Private Limited, and currently leads a team of dedicated, passionate storage technical sellers at IBM. His core expertise in the area of designing compute and storage architectures for organizations. That's all from my side now. Without taking any more of your time, I invite Raghava to take the session forward. Raghava, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Sudipta. So let me, share my screen and we can get going. A very good afternoon to all of you, and thank you for being with us today afternoon. Let me take you, through the brief agenda that I have with me over here, right? So I'll be talking basically about, the software-defined storage, what is its relevance, what is its importance, right? And why is it, becoming, everybody's talking about it, today, right? About the IBM portfolio for software-defined storage, and something, about the solutions that we have, which revolves around Spectrum Virtualize, Spectrum Scale, Spectrum Protect, all these, components which are used to build, we use to build software-defined, solutions for our customers, right? So let me start off, with a simple question, right? Enterprises today, organizations, what do they expect from storage, right? Yeah, there is a basic level of the functionality, right? There is block access or file access that a particular application requires. Mainly, databases, which would be, if customers, if you are using, databases, you would want to, have a block access, maybe with a fiber channel based SAN or a iSCSI based SAN, right? But if you're building, you would look for file access generally, if you're building some sort of, a data lake, some sort of, a file system type of an access, just to, hold all your files in one repository, you would be looking at, something like, a file access, type of architecture, for your applications, right? From storage today, enterprises, they want continuous availability, right? Your heart does not stop beating. So for an organization, also they don't want their data to go missing, or it needs to be available all the time, right? For the applications, right? Performance. You don't want to wait when you go to an ATM You put your, debit card inside the slot. You don't want to wait for the money. It needs to, come out quickly, right? You want to do a transaction. You want to, a particular invoice, a particular, piece of data. You want it, to come quickly. You don't want to wait for it, right? Today, people don't have that patience, right? So naturally, storage performance is very, very important, for such things, be it, the IOPS, be it throughput, be it latency, right? Let me just hide this. Yeah. Naturally, organizations are talking about, backup and restore, right? I mean, data is important. We don't want it, to get lost. We want to protect it against any, cyber attacks. Right? And at the click of a button, people want to back up that data. And then at a click of a button, they want to, restore that data. Right? People want disaster recovery in case of floods, in case of a massive power outage, in case of an earthquake. Want to be able to, move quickly to another site, and you want to get your business, up and running, right? And naturally, security, right? About encryption, be it, data at rest encryption, be it, in-flight encryption, right? We don't want today. It is, pretty serious. I mean, businesses have gone down because of, hacking, right? And all this naturally, and all this at the least possible cost, right? And cost has so many components. There is an initial cost of acquisition, but not just that. There are also, upgrades that an enterprise does to their storage capacity over a period of time. What is the cost of that upgrade? What about the problem of, hardware obsolescence, right? What about, maintenance cost? What about skills, right? So all these things, are sort of, people want, from their storage architecture, be it a software-defined storage, be it, a traditional hardware-based, storage appliances, right? I mean, there are some expectations, I mean, that enterprises, want from their storage subsystems. Okay. Now let's talk about, something else that is happening, right, in the industry today. Right? Enterprises are moving, towards a cloud. Okay. There's no, doubt about it. But it is not just, okay, you just lift, shift, and move all your applications, to the cloud. What we are seeing is enterprises are going towards a hybrid cloud, type of an architecture. Right? Certainly, there is an increase in the usage of clouds. Many of, the new age applications are, going to the cloud. There is a requirement for data, frankly, to move seamlessly between on-prem and, off-prem. In fact, what we are seeing worldwide, that, on an average, an enterprise can have, 5 different clouds. They may be using, 5 different clouds simultaneously, right? So there are reasons, very, very valid reasons, right? I mean, where customers, go for this and hybrid cloud, type of an architecture, on-prem, off-prem, different clouds, and, movement of data, movement of apps, applications, between the clouds. Okay. So whatever storage subsystem, that you plan to, deploy needs to, cater to this, hybrid cloud imperative. And other important, transformation that is happening is in the way applications are, now being constructed, are being deployed in a data center. It is not on, physical servers. It is not just on, normal virtual machines. But today we are seeing widespread containerization of applications, right? And it has its uses, right? Now you have these slim, containers. You can just deploy it immediately on the fly, wherever you want to, be it on-prem, be it off-prem, frankly, in any other, cloud, right? And storage requirements for containers is something, different, right? There is a requirement, for persistent storage, right? For easy portability of containers, across on-prem, across different servers, across the cloud. Okay. So we need to have a storage system which will enable this digital transformation, frankly, to happen. Now let's come, to, what is a software-defined storage, right? I mean, our view of, frankly, what is a software-defined storage? I mean, so software-defined storage is, a layer which sits between your applications, right? And also, your underlying, storage devices, that are there, right? Okay. Yeah. And also, the underlying, storage that is there, right? It's a layer that sits, and it is a layer that has the intelligence and the functionality, right? That is deployed within the application host and, the storage devices. Okay. It manages the backend storage that you have. These could be, different types of, storage devices, right? Could be just JBoss, could be, disks inside a server, a storage rich server, so on and so forth. And it responds, to the request for data which these applications are asking, from the underlying storage. Right? And yes, I mean, so by software defined storage, we basically mean this intelligent layer which is sitting here, right? And which separates the hardware, which is separate from the hardware, right? I mean, so the point is, yes, I'm able to get all the required storage functionality that I want by using general off-the-shelf components, by using commodity hardware. I can build enterprise storage systems, so enterprise storage architectures, which caters to the diverse needs, right, of my applications, be it containers, be it, providing DR capability, providing encryption, right, providing, replicas of data, ability, to have it backed up, frankly, to some other, common repository. Okay. So software defined storage is frankly, is providing us today the means, right? The means for enterprises to deploy a hybrid cloud, to deploy, to containerize, their applications in a very, very cost effective way. Right. So software defined storage is what, leads to hybrid cloud architecture, enables enterprises to build that hybrid cloud architecture. It is frankly the cornerstone, for storage for a containerized world, right? It has endless possibilities and, frankly, no limits, frankly, to what you can do with a software defined storage, type of an architecture. Okay. Now let me go through, frankly, in brief about IBM's, point of view of the software defined storage architecture. What are the various components, frankly, that we use to build an SDS, for our customers, right? So like I mentioned, a customer may have databases, may have various, virtual machines, which traditionally, work on, block storage. It requires block storage. That is something, that you cannot change, right? Yes, they work best with, with an iSCSI or a Fiber channel based SAN, or today you also have, the NVMe protocol, right? And you need and block storage where, customer would like to use maybe, different SAN products, different storage systems built on flash, spinning disks, right? Then you have, your unstructured data, right? And this is what is growing at a tremendous rate in, in all our, customer locations, right? And this unstructured data, right, is used for analytics, predictive, real-time analytics, and we have, various big data applications for various, storing of documents, modeling, enterprise data marts, so on and so forth. Right. So this, file and object storage, definitely, uses different set of protocols depending upon, the application. It could require normal SMB, NFS. It could be built on HDFS. It could be using, object store protocols like, OpenStack Swift and Amazon S3, protocols. Okay. And then naturally both your structured and unstructured data needs to be backed up, right? Needs to be archived to tape for long-term retention, for regulatory purposes, maybe, for your UAT, so on and so forth. Okay. So IBM's, generally for the block storage, right, has a solution that is called as the IBM Spectrum Virtualize, which enables you, to build this software-defined, storage architecture for block data. And then we have something called as, the IBM Spectrum Scale, right, which provides these varied set of interfaces. Okay, a single software which provides a varied set of interfaces for various applications, right, which need it. Okay, we have, a separate thing called as, the IBM Cloud Object Storage, which is, which can easily integrate with both Spectrum Virtualize and Spectrum Scale, right? For long-term retention, for archival purposes, you can use, a dedicated cloud object storage device. Okay. We have, offerings basically, built for both these offerings, Spectrum Virtualize or Spectrum Scale, enables customers, to have a DR capability, right? We provide tools within Spectrum Virtualize and Scale for easy failover and failback, from a DR location. Okay. Backup, right? For backup, we have a dedicated, software offering that is called as Spectrum Protect, and then, the Spectrum Protect Plus over here, as well as, a very interesting software offerings, SDS offering that is called as, the Spectrum Archive, right? The Spectrum Archive enables customers that, for their unstructured data, just like how on a laptop you want to, store some file, important file, then you just plug in a USB key and then move the files, frankly, to that USB key. Spectrum Archive, frankly, does something similar for all your unstructured data, which can go up to, petabytes in size, right? You need, a centralized monitor, for this complete infrastructure, which is provided by a software suite that is called as, the Spectrum Control over here. Okay. And Spectrum Discoverer is another, very interesting piece of, software offering that we have, especially, when it comes to unstructured data, right, which can go up to petabytes and petabytes. And you need a very easy way of cataloging the data that is there, in your data lake. Okay. You need to understand what sorts of data, basically build a metadata about the data that is there, in your data lake. Spectrum Discover helps you, frankly, to do that. So let me, frankly, and briefly go through, some of these things, offerings with you, in a little bit of, detail. Let me start with, Spectrum Virtualize, which we use for our block storage offerings, right? So Spectrum Virtualize has a varied, you build, a Spectrum Virtualize, a storage system on Spectrum Virtualize. You get all the capabilities, frankly, that is mentioned on this particular slide, right? Be it internal or even external storage virtualization, mirroring of data. Hyperswap is a capability which enables you to set up active, type of a data centers, 3-site replication, mirroring, right? Remote replication, local replication. It allows you, frankly, to take a snapshot or a clone of the data that is there in Spectrum Virtualize on a third-party cloud like Amazon or an IBM cloud, or you can take a snapshot of that data and put it, frankly, on the cloud, right? Provides data reduction capabilities like compression and deduplication, right? Encryption of data at rest, and yes, naturally, container support. So Spectrum Virtualize, gives you the capability, I'm just, let me talk about some of, a few features, a little bit more detail, which are very interesting, about Spectrum Virtualize, right? So it enables you, to build a 2-site as well as, a zero data loss 3-site type of configuration, right? Hyperswap is something that, you have 2 data centers, which are maybe, 10, 20, 30 kilometers apart, right? You have a fiber channel connectivity, frankly, between them. And you can have an active type of a data center, frankly, between both of them, both the sites, right? So that even if one site goes completely down, data is, continues to be served from the other, Spectrum Virtualized system over here, so that data is always available. You can build 4-site configurations with Spectrum Virtualized, also, for that, right? So, you can have, frankly, as a very common, scenario which we have deployed in a number of banks and other critical installations is whereby, customers, they want to have a situation where, okay, I'm mirroring my data between 2 sites. Okay, it is a synchronous replication. So what data is here is also, over here, right? But in a normal scenario, if this site goes down for whatever reason, right, a system administrator will have to spend time to, bring up the system which is there in his near site, right? Bring up the volumes, map it to the host, and then, start IOs again. Easily, minimum at least 30 to, minutes to a 1 hour, or maybe, sometimes, even more also, depending upon, the size of the data that he has, right? So whereas with the feature that we call as, the hyperswap, this system over here can automatically take over if there is a catastrophic failure to the system over here and start serving IO, to your host applications over here. So there is no downtime, there is no disruption to an enterprise, operations. And yes, the same data can also be, replicated to a third site, right? For a FAR-DR type capability. So Spectrum Virtualize also enables you to do an external virtualization type of thing, right? So if ever you have different storage systems today in the data center, okay, each of them frankly, say for example you have an IBM system which is already full at 95% capacity. You also have a system maybe from EMC which is only 25% capacity. But can you, just like that, frankly, start utilizing applications which are accessing this storage system? Just, start accessing, the capacity which is available over here. You can't, unless you have a virtualized type of an environment, whereby, you can pool the capacity from different storage systems together, okay, to present, a single storage pool for various, applications which are running on your servers. And then, you can, sort of make better utilization of the storage capacity that is there in the data center, right? So you can have, systems from EMC, HP, NetApp, wide range of third-party systems, right? Spectrum Virtualize allows you, frankly, to pool the capacity of these different systems, present a single pool, and to this common pool, frankly, you can have all advanced functionalities like encryption, like remote replication, okay, so on and so forth. So how do we deliver, Spectrum Virtualize, right? One is, yes, we deliver it as an appliance, right? What we call as, a SAN volume controller, okay, which there is no capacity, this capacity in the SAN volume controller, right? So we are going to use, existing storage systems, frankly, which are there, okay, in the data center. Any of those, third storage systems, we don't, frankly, it's the interoperability list is, very, very huge, over there, right? We just want, that storage system to be under support from the respective vendor. That is all, okay. Otherwise, we'll be able to, virtualize that and under the SAN volume controller and give the capacity that is required for block access, right? We also have some integrated appliance, what we call as, the flash systems, 5000 all the way, to the 9000 series, right? These come with, internal flash and, SSD capacity and, yeah, and spinning disks, right? Which can, give the required capacity and functionality to hosts, right? We also give, provide Spectrum Virtualize just as a software, and it is available on certain clouds. As of today, it's available on the IBM cloud. It is also available on Amazon cloud, okay? And using, for example, in the Amazon cloud, using, the EC2 instances as well as, the EBS storage, right? You can build a storage system on Spectrum Virtualize, okay? So so this was, again, the external virtualization capability, right, that I was, frankly mentioning to you about, whereby you may have systems from Dell, Pure, NetApp, IBM, many others, HP, also Hitachi, right? And it pools the capacity from these different systems and presents it, frankly, as and from that pool you can present, virtual disks, to your various applications, right? And now what happens is that you have a single point of management of your complete storage infrastructure, which is comprised of storage systems from different vendors, okay? You can have a common services across the storage pool, be it local replication or encryption or remote replication or three-site services, compression, deduplication, all those things can be applied uniformly across all these, third-party storage systems. You can have, do changes to storage without disrupting host applications, and so on and so forth, right? So let's talk a little bit more on, the Spectrum Virtualize on the public cloud. right? I mean, how do people use it? So you have built an on-prem infrastructure using Spectrum Virtualize, using the appliance or using some dedicated infrastructure, right? By using the Spectrum Virtualize on a public cloud, you could have your DR site in the cloud on the IBM or the Amazon as of today. I understand, IBM is also working on delivering this Spectrum Virtualize on Azure and various other, cloud service providers also. Okay, so you can build, your DR on the cloud, basically an on-prem Spectrum Virtualize, which is replicating data to a DR site, which is also on Amazon or IBM Cloud, and using the Spectrum Virtualize feature, right? You can use a third-party cloud. You can take a copy of the data which has been replicated to the third-party cloud, right? Take a snapshot of that and use it for your DevOps purposes, use it for analytics purposes. Okay, you can frankly just use this as a protection against any cyber, as for cyber resilience, right? You can have sort of an air gap data copy in the third party cloud to avoid any cyber resiliency type of an issues. Okay, you have you can do for example migrate data to the cloud for various reasons, right? And sort of the Spectrum Virtualize provides you a sort of an ideal platform to build a hybrid multi-cloud type of a thing, right? Along with the containerization of your applications. It's sort of for any application that requires block access, this forms the ideal platform, right, for such purpose. So let's also go on. I mean, so I more information frankly about using the Spectrum Virtualize on a public cloud, right? Let's talk about unstructured data now. Building a software defined storage solution, right, for unstructured data. Okay. So let me just pause over here and check if there are frankly any questions or anything. Let me see uh, that are there in the chat window. Please feel free to ask any questions. So there is a question from Mr. Sunil Yadav. Is there any downtime required to configure the SAN controller in a DC? Let's assume having 2 storage boxes, Hadoop setup. Okay. So see, downtime is certainly required. The actual, see what happens when we introduce a Spectrum Virtualize in an existing storage environment is that we need to do certain changes into your SAN switches, right? There are certain zoning changes that are required, mainly to let the hosts know that guys, host applications know that guys, you are now not going to talk directly to the storage underneath. You are going to talk to it through a SAN, a volume controller or a Spectrum Virtualize platform. Okay, so this zoning changes requires a downtime, and from my experience what we do is that we take maybe a block of 4 to 5 applications at a time and move it from the existing storage box to a Spectrum Virtualized box, right? So the downtime required is actually not more than 2 hours, 2.5 hours for a block of 5 applications, if you take that. Okay, the actual process of data migration, which that happens at the background, okay, from the underlying storage to a Spectrum Virtualized migration, Spectrum Virtualized. That actual process of migration, is non-disruptive. There is, frankly, no time. Your applications can continue to run as the migration of data happens, at the back end. Okay. But to affect the zoning changes, frankly, in the SAN switches and, for the multipathing drivers, frankly, to take effect, it requires a downtime, I would say about 2.5 hours, for a set of 5 applications, if we take at a time. Okay. Now, Hadoop setup is something that is different. I will talk about, an Hadoop setup over here, whereby, for Hadoop, normally, we would use Spectrum Scale, frankly, as the SDS platform, and I'll just talk about it. Okay. So please feel free, to ask questions. Absolutely, happy, to answer them. Okay. Okay. For some reason, the annotate has come. Okay. Now, IBM Spectrum Scale is our, software-defined storage, for huge data lakes, right? I mean, for goes up to, petabytes and petabytes, and somebody wants to build a data lake for analytics purpose, for HPC, high performance computing purpose, so on and so forth, right? I mean, Spectrum Scale is frankly, the ideal choice. Okay. Uh, so today, if you look at an unstructured data, right? I mean, people have, the sort of applications that run on, unstructured data, right? Could be SAP HANA, could be Spark, could be SAS Analytics, Kafka, MongoDB, so many new gen applications that have come. There could be a high performance compute farm, okay? And what Spectrum Scale allows an enterprise to do is that it provides varied interfaces to these applications, be it native POSIX interface, be it a file system interface like NFS, SMB, be it HDFS, right? For Hadoop, be it an object interface like S3, Swift, be it even a containers, right? I mean, for containers you need something called as the CSI driver. Spectrum Scale provides that. And underneath Spectrum Scale, you can have different types of storage tiers. You can have flash, you can have normal spinning disks, right? You can also have tape, okay, under Spectrum Scale. And you can automatically move data based on predefined policies from flash to disk to tape. Okay. So policies could be something like, okay, if my file is remember, I mean, with Spectrum Scale, we are talking hundreds of terabytes, to petabytes of unstructured data, right? And for your application needs, you may have different tiers like flash or spinning disk. So you can have a policy which states that, okay, if my flash tire is becoming 80% full, move all the files which have not been accessed for more than 60 days to my spinning disk, normal spinning disks. And similarly, move files, from spinning disks, to tape. So this movement happens transparently to the applications. It happens, without any system administrator, type of an intervention who has to sit and check which are the files to move from, one drive tire, to another drive tire, right? So this ILM is an inbuilt capability of powerful feature of Spectrum Scale. Okay. You can deploy Spectrum Scale on different types of disks. You can just deploy it on storage rich servers. Okay. You can also we have dedicated appliances called as ESS on which you can deploy these Spectrum Scale. Okay. In fact, this ILM feature that I said, I mean, you can also tire data from on-prem to a third-party cloud, right? Amazon or an IBM cloud, or generally any cloud which offers an S3 interface, right? You can move those files, frankly, to a third-party cloud based on predefined policies. Okay. In fact, you can build this common shared global namespace, right, across Spectrum Scale clusters which can be in different parts of the globe. Okay. And it offers features like compression. It offers features to have replication to a second site. In fact, you can have 3-site, 4-site type of a solutions, right? It offers features like immutability, encryption, audit logging, right, and so on and so forth. I mean, Spectrum Scale, running Spectrum Scale with a native POSIX interface, right, rather than traditional NFS or SMB has frankly its own advantages, right? You take any traditional filer where your applications are using NFS and or CIFS, frankly, they have frankly a single filer to which that file system is attached, right? And that single filer, and you end up frankly having a multitude of filers in your environment for frankly different uh, different applications, right? Spectrum scale allows you, frankly, to pool that capacity, right, of this different storages into one common global namespace. Okay. And, you can, serve data, frankly, to your end applications. Okay. No more. So no more, like individual filers. Okay. If you have multiple front end nodes, data is flowing through all the front end nodes. And hence, you are able to utilize, the performance of the underlying, storage pool much better with Spectrum scale. Okay. It has, a host of features and functions, right? Spectrum scale offers, replication, encryption, compression, ILM capability, right? The geo-dispersed file access, basically the capability to, to have a single global namespace across capacities spread across the world, right? Archival capability, snapshotting capability, right? You can have, file or object storage interface. You can do backup restore, okay? And you can build a Spectrum scale, storage system using any AIXs, of course, IBM's own Unix system or Linux or, Windows-based systems. Any type of hardware, any type of, storage does not matter. You can build a huge data lake with just, Spectrum scale, irrespective of the hardware, that you are using. Right? So how do we build, a Spectrum scale, type of a repository, right? So yes, you can, just use the software, right? Download the software from IBM's website and then use, industry standard commodity hardware to build your Spectrum scale cluster. Or you can buy, IBM appliances from IBM, which is called as, the elastic storage systems. Or you could also deploy Spectrum scale, okay, on a third-party cloud like Amazon or IBM cloud or any other cloud. You can actually deploy it right on the thing. Spectrum scale gives you the container storage interface. In fact, it has something that is better than just a container storage interface, which is called as the container native storage capability. Okay, so that there are absolutely no changes required to your containerized apps. Okay, if you build a storage on Spectrum scale, you can use a native POSIX capability and then derive much more, okay, performance and throughput capabilities for your containerized applications. So let me also briefly talk about another feature, a software defined storage portfolio. We have something called as the Spectrum Discoverer, right? Spectrum Discoverer, what it does is that it catalogs unstructured data which is there in a repository, right? This repository frankly could be on an object store or file storage or anything, right? But then you need a way, for example, I mean, just to give you an example, you have an application, frankly, which scans X-ray images in a hospital, okay? And using that application, Spectrum Discoverer works with that application to build a catalog of all the X-rays that are there. For example, you can say, okay, from which hospital that X-ray has come, whether that which date the X-ray was taken, okay, who's the doctor, and who's the person who's taken the X-ray, and if it has the capability, it can also go through the X-ray to determine whether it is a suspect, a COVID suspect or not. Okay, so it can build frankly, depending upon what sort of capability you give to that scanning engine, right? And you have number of those things on GitHub, so you can use Spectrum Discoverer frankly to build a catalog of the data that is there in your unstructured repository. Okay. And that repository could be an IBM Spectrum scale, could be an IBM Cloud Object Storage, it could be a Ceph, it could be built on EMC's Isilon, it could be built on NetApp, right? And some of frankly the use features is that, yeah, okay, you have identified the files based on policies that you have written in Spectrum Discoverer, right? Now you want to move those set of files to another storage tier, or you just want to determine which are the duplicate files in my environment, and then you want to delete it, right? you want to do some, data labeling for some, large scale data analytics. Okay. So, Spectrum Discover can also, go inside the file content, PDFs, and then build, certain tag and tag various, data. Okay. So Spectrum Discover is a very, very useful piece of software for analytics, for building AI engines, right? And it can, frankly, work seamlessly, irrespective of the type of, storage that, that you have in your environment. Okay. So here we are talking about, the Spectrum Protect suite, whereby which enables you to backup, right? I mean, backup is another very important area whereby you are you want to naturally, for various regulatory purposes, to back up your data. So we have a suite that is called as the Spectrum Protect suite. So be it for any VMs or containers or unstructured data or structured data, various types of databases that could be there. Okay. So that is, frankly, Spectrum Protect is something, that provides, that capability. Okay. So in addition, Spectrum Protect, we have something called as a Spectrum Protect suite, which is built for taking backups of a Kubernetes environment or Red Hat OpenShift, using which you have containerized your applications, right? And then you can actually for backup and restore of your data in which is in a containerized world. Spectrum Protect Plus does a great job of it. So this is the portfolio that we carry, right? IBM carries, be it hardware, be it software. Okay, a rich portfolio that we carry, which we use to frankly build our storage architectures for our customers. Right? Okay. For some reason, I have enabled audio, for the slides, which is actually coming out. But yeah, I mean, IBM has always been a leader. We've been in the storage industry for a very, very long time, right? And in fact, the top 20 banks worldwide, they use IBM storage. Okay. We are, the number 2 company first when it comes to, the storage software. And when it comes to the best vendor for storage services and support, we are number 1. Okay. So, that's it, frankly, that I had from my side. Any questions, anything, please feel free to ask on the chat window. Let me just see. Yeah, Sudipta, you want to take that poll now?
Yes, so thank you, Raghava, for explaining to us in such detail, the strategic and economic value of SDS, and you have shared a lot of valuable information for the audience. We do want to take the polls now. I request our tech team to please launch the polls. And meanwhile, the audience, please do send in your questions. So we have 3 poll questions. And the audience, you have about 1.5 minutes to answer this, to select any one of the options. So the first question is, how relevant were topics discussed in this webinar for you? So the options are right there before you: very relevant, somewhat relevant, or not relevant at all. Okay. So the second question is, are you considering software-defined storage solution in your organization? Yes or no? And the third question is, would you like to schedule an exclusive consultation with IBM SMEs for help on best practices and strategies for data protection and recovery in the modern hybrid world? And the options are there before you. If you want them to contact, within a few days or maybe a couple of weeks, or maybe wait for some time, that you can select. You have, yes, about 30 seconds left. So please select one of the options, and that will help the IBM team in connecting with you, and whatever your requirements are, they'll be able to address it.
Yeah, so Mr. Ahmad, as a question of how is, the auto classification of personal information and sensitive data happens. So this was something I think that came when, I was talking about Spectrum Discoverer. So, so like I said, Spectrum Discoverer, you want to, say there is a set of, application forms, that you have come in, right? I mean, the application forms has certain fields like names, like maybe a credit card information, maybe, etc., right? So the Spectrum Discoverer can be programmed, frankly, to mask that all those all those, you know, uh, fields as sensitive information, and prevent users, frankly, from depending upon the access rights that they have, from seeing, that information. Okay, when building up, a catalog of the data that is there in the repository. Okay, so yeah, so Spectrum Discoverer has that capability, whereby you can mask certain fields, right? Now, Sunil Yadav asked, does this product having retention feature for data? So, Mr. Sunil, please do, yes, we would be happy, to talk to you about our data retention, backup, and restore solutions with you. Please feel free, to share your contacts with the team over here, with the core team, and we will get back to you.
So thank you, audience. You please, if there are any more questions, please keep them coming, as we still have a little bit of time, and Raghava is there right there before you. He can take in the queries. There's one question from me, Raghava. Like, I wanted to know, which sectors do you foresee, SDS deployments happening more in the future in India? So can you share that, please?
Yeah, so Sudipta, see, just like, how, storage is not industry specific, right? I mean, be it a BFSI sector, be it a manufacturing sector, be it this thing, you know, across the sectors, people are moving to a containerized world. People are moving, frankly, to a hybrid cloud, type of an infrastructure, right, where they want to move data and apps between on-prem as well as, off-prem. Okay, so across the sector, right, I mean, you want to have, those capabilities, right? I mean, software defined storage, frankly, is a core. Okay, and especially, with people wanting to do all this, at lowest cost, without having, being tied to one particular hardware vendor, SDS is frankly the way to go. It is not industry specific. It is not that, it is suitable for one type of industry, or one type of things, sector.
Okay. Thank you. And could you also share something more about the Spectrum Discoverer? You said, that's for managing unstructured data. So can you just explain a bit about it also, its functionalities? I think now.
Yeah, so I think, the best way, frankly, to do it is okay. So let me take, a sort of, frankly, a use case for, which we did for a health, and hospital, provider, right, in these, COVID times. Okay, whereby, people want to have, there is huge amount of X-rays and CAT scans, frankly, which is, being taken in a in hospitals, right? And you have, groups of hospitals which are, building a repository of all that information for various purposes, be it research, be it, for reference, and, so on and so forth. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of, X-ray reports which can be generated, maybe even just over, a 3-month cycle period. Now, for some purpose, research purposes, right? I mean, you want a list of all X-rays, okay, which have, a particular strain of, virus, maybe a particular area of interest to you. You want only those set of, frankly, X-rays from this huge repository. what are you going to do? It would be good if you have, a sort of a catalog which has been built, which is classifying all these incoming X-rays, okay, based on, certain predefined criteria that you have told. You can say that, okay, you catalog all those X-rays based on location, based on, it goes to the X-ray, determine, what is the problem with that X-ray. You build a, sort of a catalog. That building that catalog is what Spectrum Discoverer does. Okay. And using the information in that catalog, you can, frankly, do various things. I mean, just extract, those X-ray images, or, extract, just X-rays from a particular period, or that it has, come in, or, so on and so forth. I mean, I took, just this example, but this is true for any industry sector, right? I mean, you want to have, only those tweets, okay, which have been taken, from a particular period, from this period, to that period, which have, this particular word said, or, anything like that. You build a catalog of that and, send it to me and do some sort of an analytics, on those set of tweets, whether it is positive or whether it is negative type of a tweets. I mean, the use cases are, frankly, humongous. Even I can't think of all, possible use cases. But yeah, at the end of the day, what Spectrum Discoverer gives you is the capability to build that catalog.
Thank you, Raghava, for answering with such patience the audience questions and also my questions. So that's all the time we have for today. I thank Raghava for sharing such interesting and useful information on how to make your data work for you with SDS. And to know more, you can contact the IBM team. And thank you, audience, for your interest and time. We look forward to welcoming you all in our next webinar soon. Have a great day ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Sudipta. Thank you, audience, for your patience and time.